You got me now? All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Joe Solari. I help authors build great businesses. This is the Business 101 session. This has been a tried and true session at 20Books since its inception. First off, why should you even listen to me? I think the best way to explain that is to think back to the very first 20Books when I was asked to do this presentation. I wasn't really familiar with what was going on in the author community, and coming to 20Books at that first convention and seeing what I now call the golden age of content creation, where folks like you are in this process of taking these stories that are in your head and turning them into cold hard cash, and to see how this whole industry is really at this level where you're going to have the opportunity to create iconic content and potentially generational wealth. I realized that my skills around businesses could help. And I started talking with that conference with some authors. And in that 4-year period, what's happened with me and with the authors I've worked with is, at that time, I had no clients, didn't even really know what I was going to be doing and how I was going to be helping authors, just that I knew that I could. To date, this year, the authors that I'm working with, it's about a dozen authors, they are going to do over $12 million in royalties, okay? And these are folks, none of these are people that went and got MFAs and did all kinds of crazy stuff to become an author. These are folks that just had a story that they wanted to tell and could fill an unmet need in the market. So I had to call an audible. We were going to do a little bit of an online survey, but we're going to pass on that. And I want to talk about the whole idea of what you guys are setting out to do. In 20Books, we use the summiting a mountain metaphor, and I'm just going to whip the hell out of that thing today. So we're all familiar with Sir Edmund Hillary as being the first guy that climbed Mount Everest and created this, this iconic thing about, accomplishing a goal. And what I want to remind you first off is that wasn't a solo effort, right? Like, first off, there was Tenzing Norgay that was there, okay? And a year before that, Tenzing Norgay held the record for the highest climb in the world because he was part of a Swiss team that had tried to summit Everest and had figured out this original route. But they weren't able to make it. The day before that, his record was broken by Robillard and Evans, who were 2 other climbers that were on this British expedition. And those guys got within 300 feet of the top of Mount Everest and turned around and went back. And the reason they did is their oxygen equipment was failing, and they knew that if they didn't stop there and go back, they were going to endanger the entire expedition, because if they had a dead guy on the mountain, it was going to screw things up for the rest of the trip. So they walked back. And that set things up for this guy to make that climb, because there was an actual path walked through the snow. There was oxygen tanks left along the way for them to use. And that allowed him to do that. And I want you to think about your time while you're at this conference as your way to build out your expedition. Find the people that are going to climb that mountain with you. Find the tools you're going to need to do it. And I hope that I'm going to be able to give you some tools to do that today. Some different ways of thinking about this, because there's a lot of people that are going to be here. They're going to talk about how to sell more books. I'm not going to talk about that. What I'm talking about is how to build a publishing company, something that's sustainable and can help you to do what you want to do. Now, while the summit is defined by you, we all have the same base camp. If you don't have these things in place, then things just aren't going to go well the rest of the way up the mountain. A lot of times what's happened here is we get too focused on marketing and sales and not on what it takes for a business to be successful, because it's not fun. It's not exciting, right? It's stuff that requires patience and deliberation. But what you'll see is if you start doing this stuff, your probability of success is going to increase significantly. Now, I mentioned earlier that when they were climbing that mountain, they got to a point where they stopped and they turned around and went back down, because when you look at something like summiting Mount Everest, any mountain that's above 8,000 feet or 8,000 meters, when you get there, you're in what's called the death zone. And we know now, they didn't know it at the time, but what is happening is Because of the conditions of the atmosphere, the lack of oxygen, pressure, your cells can't properly process oxygen. So you're dying at the cellular level. And if you stayed up there too long, you're done. You have about a 12-hour window that you need to summit and then descend, right? And what most people don't know is most of the deaths on Everest are on the descent. Part of it is just failure of the body. The other thing is because you get so disoriented from your body basically dying, is you lack the faculties to like put your foot in front of the other and not fall down the mountain. In business, it's running out of cash. And the number one reason why startups fail is they don't have enough cash. That isn't a publishing issue. It's a small business issue. It's a big business issue. The numbers you see here, businesses failing in the 21% of businesses failing in the first 12 months and 50% failing in 5 years. This is numbers from the SBA, and it crosses all sizes of businesses, all types of businesses, in boom cycles. It's 120 years of data that they have. And the number one reason why a business fails is because it runs out of cash. And I think it gets lost on us as authors that we're also doing a startup at the same time as we're trying to write a good book. So what I want to help you do today is kind of we're going to cover all these areas, a lot of them quicker, but we're going to talk a lot about setting up this base camp. Because here's the other thing is a lot of people, when they think about the base camp at Everest, it's like at the base of the mountain. But it isn't. It's about halfway up. So knowing that you get this work done, you're more than halfway on your journey. And if you do some of the things I'm going to talk about, you have a higher probability of finishing this journey, which is what you really want to do. So you're running a startup. And until this business makes money, your publishing business, you are the main investor in it, which means you're supplying all the money. And again, it doesn't matter what business, no investor wants to be the guy putting money in. You invest in a business to get money out. So one of the things we want to do is figure out how we can get you to be moving from that point of being the investor into being somebody that's actually able to take money out of this thing. No business is functional until it gets to the point where it's actually producing cash. And we're going to talk about some ways that we can make that work better. And understand that underfunded startups is the #1 failure, and that's what all of us as new authors are facing. Now here's another big myth. Like we think about authordom and what it's going to be like, and we're going to have this ascent. And this is garbage. This is really what it looks like, right? And what's important about when you look at this and you think about it is there's some reasons why we have these ups and downs. It's actually natural, and it's part of the industry. The problem is it's an emotional roller coaster. It's really hard on the psyche to be going through these ups and downs. But what you're going to see is that every piece of your business has an up and down. So the building block of your business is the launch cycle, or is your launching of a book, right? And this is going to be your career. You're going to write a book, you're going to publish it, rinse and repeat. When you look at how a launch works, you always have to invest money in before it starts to make money. What we don't know if you're a new author is that time frame. How long is it going to take for you to earn back, right? It could be 6 weeks, it could be 6 years. And that is going to help you to understand what time frame you need to keep these cycles going. But again, what I'm going to show you is some ways to have a better understanding of this, because a lot of folks don't even figure a budget out for this. And if you don't have a budget for a basic launch, how do you know how much money you need as the investor to make sure that this business is successful and gets through that launch? Now, this is the other part of this thing that people don't understand. A lot of this research is stuff that I've done, and this is one of the few places you can see this stuff. And I've looked at thousands of titles launch decay curves. And it doesn't matter who the author is, what the genre is, they all look the same. You have this initial burst at launch, you have your audience consuming your book, and then you have it die off. Now, the peak of that depends on where you are in your career. Like, I've got some people that peak could be $100,000 that first month, and others it's 100. The point is to understand that if you think your books are going to do anything but this every time you launch them, you're crazy, right? If you just get your mindset around this, then that's going to help with that emotional up and down, because it's not you, it's not the book. It's the natural decay of an audience consuming your book. Now they're waiting for the next one, right? And that's part of this whole thing from just a mindset perspective I'd really like you to take home. Even if you're not ready for some of these other things I'm going to talk about, if you can save yourself the self-flagellation that you're personally responsible for the marketing abandoning you, it's not that. Like, this is, everybody goes through these cycles. So how can I help you get outfitted for this to work well? And I'm going to start with the understanding that you guys are just getting started. And the money that you have is a finite amount of money. You may think you need to set up a publishing company and set up a company and do all kinds of, no. Your money needs to be going into getting a product that can go to market and making it the best possible product you can. And what money you have left over from that needs to be going into how you can get some visibility on that product. There's a lot of people in here that are going to talk about how to get that visibility. I'm not going to touch on that. But what you do need to do in a very basic sense of setting up your business is start to separate your assets from your business assets. And one simple way to do that is to get what's called an employee identification number. It's free. You get it from irs.gov. And it's like your business social security number. And you would do this not because it gives you any kind of protection, but what, in the sense of liabilities, but what it does do is you use that EIN number when you set up your business bank account, where you're going to be running your business from, and when you set up your accounts with KDP and the other platforms. Because now you've protected your social security number from identity theft. You have an EIN number out, or EIN out there, which is, you know, the guys that are stealing identities really don't want those. But that's a really basic way to get set up and to start thinking about, I have this bank account, and that's where I'm going to put the capital in, that I'm going to run this business. So the big thing comes like, well, how much money you're going to need to run this thing? And I know a lot of folks are not real keen about building budgets, right? The other side of it is that there's some folks that would love to just sit and make fancy spreadsheets and plan their business forever and never actually execute. We don't want to be either of those, right? So what I've done is I've got a tool, and you can go to my website, and it's free. You just go there. It's the Author Capital Planner, and it's an online tool that is designed to help you figure out the money you're going to need for the first 5 years of your business, okay? And you think, well, I can't imagine it's taking that long. The statistics show that most businesses take 3 to 5 years to break even. And as someone that has looked at dozens of authors' businesses and has an insight into this industry few people have, all these people you think are overnight successes aren't. It took 5, 10, 12, 20 books to get to the point where they found their voice and they started to make money and they actually had a business that could pay for itself. So again, this is the idea of us doing the things we can do to make sure that we're successful and we're around for that success. If you run out of money, you can't be there for that 5th book that's going to be the one that breaks out, right? So we use this tool, and I've just got some screenshots here to go there. And it shows what you can do is you can put in your basic costs, what it costs you to get your editing done, do your covers. And what it's going to do is it's going to produce for you your sales projection and your cost projection and give you a number how much money it's going to get the business started up. What's going on here? Okay. This is an important piece of this whole thing because let's say it's going to cost you that to get to break even. How many people are scared of the number of $2,200? Everyone's got 20. Yeah, I mean, it's okay. It's a big number, right? Like, if you thought you were going to do, once you laid out your plan, if you thought you were going to do this in a 3-book launch, and you suddenly realize that I don't have $2,200 to pull this off, now you're in a different position for success because you can back off and be like, okay, that was a plan that was doomed to fail before I started. I am now going to back off and take a little bit longer to write my books, and I'm going to save up the money so that I know that the money is there for me to execute a 5-year plan with success. Understanding that you need to give your investor time to invest in this business right is something that we all forget when we're really enthusiastic about that business, because we're like, I know this book's going to be great. But the reality is it is going to be great, but you don't have an audience if you're just getting started. You have to get that book out there to find the audience, and then another one to prove to them that you're not just a one-book wonder, that you are here to be around, and it might, oh, it's a trilogy. Maybe they're not going to read because they want to make sure the full trilogy is out. Understand that your readers have expectations. And if you don't stick around as a business to be around to satisfy them as a customer, it's not going to work out. So the next thing is thinking about being cash flow positive, right? Where the business is actually producing money. And while that sounds really cool, when anybody that's ever had a small business and done this, you realize that while it's cash flow positive, it doesn't mean that it actually, like, you're laying on the beach, right? It's like, that money's got to go back in the business to make more money. So what can we do to help you when you get to that level to start thinking through some things? One of the things that a lot of folks start thinking about once they make money is, should I set up a company? And I could do an entire presentation on that. What I want you, again, to keep in mind is understanding that until you're seeing a profit, my rule of thumb, other people may not agree with this, but mine is that you're having about $10,000 in profit, not royalties, but profit. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for you to be putting your money into setting up that company. Once you get to that level, it makes a lot of sense because there starts to be tax savings. And there's certainly immediately, once you do that, there's liability protection. We just want to really think about what makes your business early successful. It's making sure that you're finding customers, you're delighting them, and that those funds get reinvested in the business. So if that's something that you're really thinking about, it's probably something, if you're not at that profit level, that should just be put on the back burner for a short time and focus on those customers. Now, let's talk about expenses really quickly. My partner, Lisa, is going to be here on Thursday. She's doing a book record keeping and expenses seminar. So she's going to get into a lot of specifics about that. But again, this is more of a mindset thing. You know, a lot of times when we start a small business, we start thinking like, oh, I'll spend a bunch of money, right? Everything's tax deductible. Well, what that means is that you don't have to pay taxes on it. If that cash is gone, right, you can't use it for anything. So in a case of, let's just say you have a 30% tax rate and you don't spend that on as an expense, you have that $100 that you made. Yes, you have to pay taxes on it, but now you have money that you can either take out of the business for you personally, because in the end, this is about you making a living writing, or reinvesting back in the business. If you spend it all, it's gone. And when you're in your early stages, it always seems that the money just goes too fast into the wrong things. So when you can start having some thoughts about how you can reserve cash, you're going to have more opportunities to adjust as your business presents those opportunities. So we get to the point where what happens when you do have a profit? Most often what we do is we put far too much back into our business. We forget about that investor. And this is something I want you to think about is, if you're an investor, if I was an investor in your business, as wonderful as I might think your books were, that I wanted to give you the money to invest, I'd want money back, right? Like I'm weighing my investment in your publishing business against, I could put it in the stock market. I could buy an S&P 500 index, right? I could go buy crypto or timeshare. I don't know. There's all, we're the person that's the entrepreneur and we're doing this. we don't value our time or our money. We'll work we work ourselves to death to make this business successful, and we're always prepared to sacrifice our personal over the business. And what I would ask you to do is to start as soon as you possibly can to start paying yourself back, even if it's just a little bit. And to help you think about that in early stages, what I've come up with is this rule. And what is this, 40, 54, 60 guideline? What does that mean? Well, for every dollar that comes into your business, assume 40% is going to go towards taxes. It's not your money. You're just holding it for Uncle Sam for a little bit. 6% or 6 cents of every dollar, take out of the business. You paid the taxes on it. It's your money. Take it out. You could always reinvest it back in, but just getting in the habit of taking money out of your business, even if it's just to pay the Netflix bill, just something for you to get in the habit of making your business set up that it's serving you, not the other way around. And then you have 54 cents of every dollar you can reinvest back in your business. Now, I'm not suggesting you should do that because this is a really poor efficiency business, right? Like I said, I've worked with a lot of authors that are doing, mid 6, 7 figures, and a lot of them, when they come to me, they may only be seeing 20 cents on the dollar coming out of that business because they have really high expenses. We're able to work with them and get them to the point where they're getting 40 and 55 cents on the dollar coming out. Now, that's a wildly successful business that's producing an enormous amount of cash. There's a lot of things that have to happen to do that. But if you are always focused on this as this business is a vehicle for your personal wealth, not that you and your money is a slave to it to make products for the market, you're going to have a different mindset that's going to help you to drive through all the obstacles you're going to face in this. Going the wrong way, sorry. So the last thing I want to touch on, and then a couple of slides here, and then we'll open it up for some questions. 9 to 5 exit. I'm going to provide a sheet that I have that's a checklist for anybody here that's at that point where you really want to start thinking about your exit, your day job, and what you're trying to do to make this a full-time deal. And when you look at this, it's good to look at early in your career because it's going to help you see the things that you really need to get in place once you are your own employer, because a lot of times you just don't understand all the things that as a self-employed person you're going to have to deal with when it comes to paying taxes, setting up your own health insurance, dealing with reporting functions for your state and federal government, all those things, as well as the things that are to help it be a more seamless transfer from you working somewhere and having kind of a safety net to you now being your own safety net. Now, there's an interesting thing that I've observed in the 4 years that I've been around the industry, and it is still a lot like what we see happening on Everest. Technology and opportunity is making it easier and easier for more folks to try and scale this mountain, and it's getting crowded. The facts are there are more millionaire authors today than there have ever been. What hasn't changed is the percentage of success, right? We're just applying it to a larger number of people, right? We've got more people at this conference than we had at last year. So understanding that this is a daunting mountain and you're going to need to really think through some of these things is going to help you be successful. And I can tell you this, is a lot of people that are trying to become, make their living from being an author aren't interested in doing this stuff. So by applying these business practices and these mindsets, you're going to have an advantage others will not have. The fact that you're thinking about cash in the way that I talked about here today is going to increase your success tenfold, literally tenfold, the chances of you getting to where we're talking about. Because what I've seen get people in trouble, whether they're new or they're doing $1 million a year, is their cash flow gets messed up. Now, one thing that may help you as you're going through this process, and come out of this conference, you're going to have a million ideas. There's going to be all kinds of things through your career, and we don't know what's coming our way, right? We don't know what the next technology is going to be. Amazon's going to change stuff. We don't know any of that stuff. What I can tell you is one thing that's immutable. It's on the customer. Are going to be whatever the industry throws at you. I don't know what's going on with this thing. By that is we sometimes forget where the money comes from. There's only one source for money as an author, and that's the reader or listener, whatever it is that is your main thing. And as long as you keep that in mind and try and get that relationship as close as humanly possible, right? I'm not saying that it's all about direct sales, because some customers will never buy direct from you. But what it is about is that customers are, you taking care of them and you meeting needs, it's going to be easier for you to succeed. So let me kind of wrap this up here, and then we can open up for some questions. You need to have a plan for your cash flow. You can't just ignore this, thinking it's going to work out, or that you're on a mission from God, or your chakras are aligned. I mean, that's great, but that's not going to make this successful. This is the stuff that really works. And literally, if you just do that thing I showed you on my website and take a screenshot of it, you're like in the top 2% of small business owners in this country. You have a cash flow plan. Like, that's how scary this is how that there's just people that will actively ignore these resources that can help them be successful. If you can do this by the launch, that's awesome, because like I said, that's your building block. You have successful launches, they just add up into a successful business. That 3 to 5 year plan, this is important to understand that while we all have this urgency for this to be successful, time flies. That 3 to 5 years is going to go by. And I know, because I've started up a lot of businesses, you can spend a lot of time just trying to fix mistakes you made in the first 2 years. And if you do this stuff and you know that you have that money set aside and you hold off on that launch for a year because you know you need to save that money up, your whole business will be more successful. It will be successful at the tempo that the business has for it. The fact that you want to push it and try and do it with less money, you're actually making it harder. It's like you're just going to go, well, I'm going to go up the mountain with no oxygen. It's okay. You're going to get in that death zone, and the death zone don't care, right? So we want to make sure that you're not one of those frozen bodies at the top of the mountain. You really have to look at that first milestone and planning for that, because it's so important that the business starts paying for itself, because we all have a finite amount of money. I know a lot of people in this industry make massive sacrifices to try this out, and that's laudable, but there's at some point where you can't keep pulling money out of something else to make this work. So focusing on that plan to have the cash to get to that point, and then executing that plan to get to that cash flow positive. Even if it's a penny, like, the game has changed. You're now in a place that most businesses never get to. Understand this whole piece I talked about with sales curves. I know it's kind of esoteric, and it isn't like a hard, fast thing about a business, but in our industry, those ups and downs that are naturally part of the business we're in mess with our heads. And we don't need to let that keep happening. And when you see that it's not you, it's not the book, it's not the machine gods at Amazon, it's how the industry works, and you start looking at not how high these peaks go, but how at each time when your book comes off, do you have a lower plateau? right? Because when you climb a mountain like Everest, you don't just rush up to the top. There's acclimatization. You go to a certain height and you stop and you rest and you get yourself set. And then you move up to the next level and then you come down. And then you move up and then you come down. But in the end, you get up and you get down safely. And that's really what we want to try and do. Like my last point, I was just going on about, remember where the cash comes from. It's from our readers. Now, what I want to do is give you guys some opportunity to ask questions here. We got about 10 minutes left. But a couple things you need to know. If you use this QR code or go to this link, you can give me your email address, and you'll get access to these slides, and you'll get a bunch of resources, actually for all of my presentations that Lisa and I are doing. You'll also get the opportunity to sign up for time with me. So any questions we don't get to here, one thing you need to understand is my time is available to you. Every Thursday, I have office hours. You can sign up for a half hour of my time. It doesn't cost you a thing. I don't sell you anything. I talk about your business, okay? And hundreds of people have done this either at these things here or online. It's my best way of working with you and understanding your specific situation and to answer questions that, quite frankly, probably shouldn't be like on Facebook or in a public forum. It's stuff that's, your personal stuff that I can help you with. So don't ignore that resource. It's probably the most powerful thing I can do to help you be successful is to have, to give you 20 minutes of my time. And it's always there. Like, it's not just for this conference. Like, you can always do this. And there's some folks that, I don't know if any are here, but people that have scheduled multiple times with me, right? It's like, we have a call and they're like, is it okay if I come talk to you in 6 months? Yes, right? So please use that resource. And with that, I'd love to kind of open this up to any questions you guys have that are relevant right now.
Can you ask on the microphone?
Run!
Hello. Could you tell us a little bit about what you do with those authors in that higher bracket to help them see that change? Of course, being one of those authors who is more where you're talking about today.
Yeah, so the authors typically come to me who are doing really well. They're at a point where what they found out is like, wow, I had my best year ever top line, but I got less money than I ever had. What happened? And it typically is a couple things. Either they're trying to grow too fast. Like, every business has a growth rate that's the right growth rate. You have to stay within the cash it's producing. And as an author business, you're in this jam because you have to wait 60 days. Like, you got expenses this month, you got to pay your advertising this month, you got to pay your cover designer this month, and then you got to wait 60 days for your money. So helping authors figure that out. And then the other thing that I think is our most powerful asset is we spend a lot of time trying to understand why you're doing this, right? Because a lot of times authors will have this success. It's like, I want to be a six-figure author. Great, you did that. Well, now why do you want to keep doing this? What is it's all about for you? And it gets to be really about your lifestyle and what you're trying to do. Is it put kids through college or pay off a house? Once we know that, how we design the business changes completely because we have like 80,000 pages of tax code. And once we understand what we're trying to do with your business, we can adjust that strategy to fit that. You can't use all 80,000 pages. They conflict. But when I know that, oh, you want to buy the $1 million forever home, that's this plan. If you want to travel the world as a vagabond, that's this plan. But you can't do both at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yes, hello, and thanks for the information I wish I had about 5 years ago. So, which is on me to get. I appreciate that. So, like in my situation, I've had books out for a while. So really, they've been launched, but there's money that I could put in to have, make more sales from them. So, for example, audiobooks, which I have not invested in, or other things. So, past launch, like for people who have already launched, what might you suggest for looking at that?
Yeah, so I think that's the wonderful thing about the author business is that you have this asset that you can redeploy, right? And you'll face in the future, there'll be some new type of media you and I have never even thought of that will come that you can bring that media, that IP to and sell. But in the short term, doing things like looking at audiobook releases, looking at translations, that's all stuff that can be really powerful force multipliers. But then the question is, well, I don't have any money. Well, I don't know what the case is right now, but last year for we helped authors get like $4.5 million worth of EIDL loans and PPP money, and a lot of authors were like, well, I really don't need it. I kind of have my best year I've ever had. It's like, that's not the point. This is like the world's cheapest capital ever. You're running a business, get this cheap capital, because that's what guys on Wall Street do, is they get cheap capital and they put it in things with high return. So you get money at 3.5% and you put it back into audiobooks that makes money and up to 50% return. Like that stuff is how you start thinking about how you can leverage your business. I don't know, I haven't really kept up lately if those things are still available, like the EIDL loan. If it is, and you're comfortable with doing some of those things, that's a way to access really low-cost capital. I don't know if that helped.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else?
The EIP loans are still available. I just got a reminder.
Awesome. Yeah, I know for some people that got the earlier round, like then they wrote you and like, hey, would you like more money? So I know it hasn't been real easy. It's not. There's a lot of hoops to go through. You're getting money from the government, but the reality is below $200,000, there's no personal guarantee on that money, right? So, yeah, you have to pledge the assets of your business, but the reality is that your personal risk. You're not risking your home or your car or anything to get money that you have 30 years to pay off, and it's 3.5% interest. Even if you only got $5,000 and you could deploy that, for a lot of you, that's a translation or that's a couple audiobooks. It's something to really think about. When you change that mindset of this is a business, this isn't just you having fun writing books. It's like you're trying to get these assets out on the street, making you cold hard cash. Yeah.
You talk about redeploying assets, and I have old books that I'm getting back from publishers, and I want to know, like, do you have some kind of program where you want to release new stuff and then go back to the old stuff? Because I'm investing a lot getting the rights back and getting new covers, and I'm wondering, am I going backwards because I'm not putting out new material? Do you have any kind of business?
Yeah, so I think that's one of those things where and again, I'd be happy let's set up a call and we can talk through that, because I don't think there's a trade-off whichever way you go. And thinking through a plan on how you may deploy things may be really the way to maximize that, because if it's, okay, I've only got X amount of dollars, I know I need to keep new stuff because I need to keep building that audience, and I can plan out 3, 6, 9, 12 months down the road dropping these other books in a really strategic way so that we maximize the number of those rounds that you get to play, right? You could use that in a really interesting way, my mind's just kind of thinking about it, to kind of fill in those holes between books, right? It's almost like you've got this ghostwriter that you've got working for you, it's all your past work that you get to bring back. And I think there's some people here that are probably going to talk about rapid release. I know Kevin McLaughlin has done that. He's got some really great stuff on that, where you bring those series back to life, and it can be those series that really is what is your breakout series, even though it was written years ago, but because you've redone the covers and maybe you've polished some stuff up and updated it, that boom, they take off.
Thank you very much.
45 seconds.
Quick question
Yes.
regarding the not making a company and the EIDL things. Do you have to do the company first, or you can do just the EIN and the EIDL?
Yeah, so what's going to change if you're a sole proprietor and you've just got your and you're going to go look for an EIDL loan, the amount of money you'll get will be smaller, but it's all contingent on what they'll do is they'll look at your personal tax return. So they'll go back and say, okay, in 2019, 2020, this is the kind of money you made, and it really is contingent on what you did in 2019, and then was 2020 worse? So like for a lot of authors, that's the problem. It's like they couldn't qualify for more money because they actually had a better year. But that's going to be what determines it. And as far as what that formula is, that's like in the secrets of the heavens. I've looked at a lot of these, and I can't figure it out in life and how they determine who gets how much money. But I do know that, you know, there is kind of steps between a sole proprietor, an LLC, and then actually, we don't recommend you setting up as a C Corp, but there's a few authors that have done that, and they've actually got qualified for the most money.
Thank you.
Thanks. I guess we're wrapped up, right?
Yeah, we have like 5-minute wiggle room in there.
Okay. Well, any more questions? You know.
I have a sob story, but I'm not going to lay that on you guys. Okay, the bottom line is I failed, I'm 3 books in. I failed to set a budget for my advertising, my promotion. I went deep in the hole. I started with a chunk, and the chunk, went like, right there. And my income was right here. So I'm in the hole big time.
Yep.
So to dig out, so you're thinking 3 to 5 years then, and I need to do a business plan, which I didn't do. And do you have books on that, like business plans?
Yeah, so if you go to my website, you'll see that I have a book called Treat Your Writing Like a Business. And I go through all this stuff in detail and walk you through, and there's some course material that comes with that. I only sell it direct. If you go there, you'll get a lot of that information. But really, if you go and you kind of reset yourself with that tool, which is free, and read the stuff that's on that page and do that and kind of understand what it's going to take you to get out of that hole, then you're in a way better place. And you just, you know, like you only got a couple options, right? Either like you drop your ball and you go home and then you're not going to do it, or you set a new plan and, you know, we just shoot our way out with the ammo we have, right?
Write 10 more books. Yeah, sure, 10 more books.
Right, but not putting the pressure on yourself is understanding, like, if you go back and look and you see that each one of those times when you did launch those books, that you built a little more audience, not looking at the peaks, I mean, the peaks are great, but did just settle out at a higher level in those valleys, then you are building an audience. The problem is we come in places like this and we see the high-powered panel and these people talk about the money they're making, and we just conveniently forget that they've been doing this since 2011, right? And some of us may be actively hiding the fact that we had a sucky series or two in the beginning, and like, oh yeah, it all happened then. No, like that's the thing the other side of this piece is, the cool thing, you get to learn by doing, right? Even if you only made $40 on that book, you got a book out, you learned how to publish, you're going to get experience from that, and you got some money, right? And you just have to keep doing that. There's not many businesses where you get at least some chance of getting to recoup your money. So I don't know if that helped.
Thank you.
Real quick. So, how do you figure out what the sweet spot is for how much to spend on things like editing and book covers and blurbs and things like that? Because there's wide ranges you could spend, but there's got to be diminishing returns for those various things.
Right. And so I think part of that, and for me, that equation is, okay, what genre are you in? Like, that's going to dictate a lot what you're going to have to spend on a cover. If you're in a genre that they expect really badass, digitally drawn covers, you're in for $1,000 or whatever it might be, versus something where you get away with a couple $100 pre-made. And then as far as the editing piece, I think it depends on where you are in your career and kind of how clean you write. I know for myself, I'm atrocious, so I'm going to always have to spend a lot of money on editing. I mean, I go back and look at stuff that, oh my God. So that's just. And then once you got to do it a few times and figure it out, right? And I think that that's something you can do a lot of research while you're here in your genres. Go to those genre groups and ask people, find out where they're getting covers. The cover designers that are here, you're going to really get to see a spectrum of talent and cost, as well as with editors. I think the same thing. And most good editors are going to give you a sample. So hopefully it helped a little bit.